I'm 30 years old and 3 weeks ago I learned that my family has spent the last decade treating me like their personal punching bag while I bankrolled their lives. I walked away from Thanksgiving dinner before it even started, and now they're losing everything. They think I'm their solution. I'm not. Let me back up because this is going to sound insane, but I need to get this out somewhere. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My brother Preston is 35, works in sales, married with 2 kids. My sister Amelia is 33, does some kind of marketing consulting thing, also married with 1 kid. Then there's me, the family charity case apparently, except I'm the one who's been paying for everything. My parents are both 62. Dad worked construction until his back gave out about 8 years ago. Mom was a school secretary who retired 5 years ago. They're still in the house we grew up in. This old 3-bedroom place in the suburbs that's been falling apart for years. I've been covering their property taxes for the last 6 years. Every year, Dad would call me in October and tell me they were short. Could I help out just this once? And every year I'd transfer the money. Started at $3,000. Now it's up to almost $8,000 a year because the neighborhood got rest zoned or something. I never made a big deal about it because that's what family does, right? Wrong. So wrong, I can't even process it still. 3 weeks ago, Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I got off work early from my warehouse supervisor job. Yeah, that's what I do. I manage inventory and shipping schedules for a regional distribution center. Not impressive dinner party conversation. But the pay is actually solid and I've been there 7 years now with regular raises. I live in a decent apartment downtown, drive a 2019 Toyota Camry that I bought used, and I've been saving money pretty aggressively. Nobody in my family knows exactly how much I make because they never asked and I never volunteered the information. I drove out to my parents' house that Wednesday because I was supposed to help Dad set up the folding tables in the garage. We were hosting Thanksgiving for the extended family, about 20 people total. I let myself in through the side door like always, because I've had a key since I was 16. I could hear voices coming from the kitchen, lots of them, and I figured everyone had arrived early. I was walking down the hallway when I heard my name and stopped. Dad's voice came through clear as anything. He was laughing. That big booming laugh he does when he thinks something is hilarious. He announced to everyone that I'd probably show up late again because I was the family charity case still begging for scraps at their table. I stood there in the hallway. I had stopped moving entirely. My Aunt Nova, Mom's sister, was cackling. She said, "At least stray dogs have friends, but this one eats alone every night like the loser he is." I heard other people laughing. My Uncle Kane, Dad's brother, made some joke about how even the turkey had more purpose than me. More laughter. Then Amelia's voice cut through. She was saying something about my big plans. Remember those? Everything I touch dies. My career, my relationships, my dignity. Gone. Preston jumped in next, shouting about how I'm their living reminder of what not to become. A pathetic failure who can't take a hint. He said it like he was making a toast. People were laughing so hard I could hear glasses clinking. Mom added that I'm 30 years old and still need my family to feed me. My cousin Marion, who I barely know honestly, suggested that they should set a place for me at the kids' table since that's more my level. Everyone thought this was hilarious. I pulled out my phone and I recorded about 90 seconds of it before I stopped. I didn't need more. I'd heard enough for a lifetime. Here's what they don't know. What none of them have ever bothered to find out. That warehouse supervisor job. I make $78,000 a year. I've been maxing out my retirement account since I was 25. I own my apartment. Bought it 4 years ago when the market dipped. Paid it off aggressively. The building is a small complex, only 12 units, and I bought 2 others as investment properties over the last 3 years. I rent those out. I've got around $200,000 in savings and investments. I'm not rich, but I'm doing fine. But here's the real part they don't know. That house they live in, the one Dad supposedly owns. I bought it from the bank 3 years ago when they were 6 months away from foreclosure. They got one of those predatory loans during the refinance boom and couldn't keep up with the payments after Dad's back injury. The bank was going to take it. I bought it outright, paid cash, put it in my name. Then I told my parents they could stay there as long as they needed. Norint. I'd cover the property taxes. Just keep up with the utilities and maintenance. I never told Preston or Amelia. My parents asked me not to because they were embarrassed. They said the other kids didn't need to know their business. I agreed because I understood. I thought I was helping them keep their dignity. They've been living in my house for 3 years, treating it like it's still theirs. And apparently spending that whole time telling everyone I'm a failure who shows up begging for free meals. Preston and his wife Jane have been in debt for years. I know this because 2 years ago he asked me to co-sign a loan for a new SUV, $28,000. He told me his credit was shot from some medical bills and he needed a reliable vehicle for his sales job. I co-signed. He makes the payments on time. I'll give him that. But it's in both our names. The paperwork is in my apartment safe. Amelia's husband, Trent, started a business 18 months ago, some kind of digital marketing agency. He needed startup capital. Amelia called me asking if I could loan them $15,000. She said they'd pay me back with interest once the business got going. I transferred the money the next day. I have the texts where she promised to pay me back. I have the bank records showing the transfer. Haven't seen a dollar of it returned. I've been the family bank for years and they've been treating me like the family failure. The math wasn't mathing for a while and suddenly it all clicked into place. I grabbed my jacket and left through the side door without making a sound. I drove back to my apartment, sat on my couch and I made a list. Every single thing I'd paid for, every loan I'd covered, every favor I'd done. It took me 3 hours. The list was 4 pages long. Then I started making calls. I called my lawyer first thing Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day. Yes, I have a lawyer. I've had one for 2 years because of the rental properties. He wasn't thrilled about working on a holiday, but I told him it was urgent and I'd paid double his hourly rate. He agreed. We spent 3 hours on the phone going through everything. The house, the co-signed loan, the personal loan to Amelia, all of it. By Friday, I had a plan. By Monday, I had documents prepared. By Tuesday, I was ready. That's when my phone started ringing. Mom first, then Dad, then Preston, then Amelia, then people I hadn't heard from in months. Cousins and aunts and uncles. Everyone suddenly very concerned about how I was doing. Where had I disappeared to? Why hadn't I shown up to Thanksgiving? Was I okay? I didn't answer any of them. The texts started coming in. Long paragraphs about family being forever. And about how we all say things we don't mean sometimes, about how I was being immature by ignoring everyone. Preston sent me 15 texts in one day. Amelia tried calling from 3 different numbers. Mom left voicemails crying about how she missed me and didn't understand why I was being so cold. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them acknowledged what they'd said. They all just acted like I'd randomly decided to cut contact for no reason. I blocked their numbers on Wednesday. All of them. Mom, Dad, Preston, Amelia, the extended family, everyone who'd been in that kitchen laughing. I blocked them on social media, too. I changed my locks even though none of them had keys to my apartment. I told my building manager that no one from my family was allowed in the building under any circumstances. Thursday night, exactly 1 week after Thanksgiving, my building manager called me at 11 p.m. He said my father was in the lobby demanding to see me. He was making a scene. I told the manager to call the police if he didn't leave voluntarily. Dad left. Friday afternoon, my mother showed up at my workplace. I have no idea how she even knew where I worked because I'd never told her the specific address. She must have followed me at some point or asked around. She came into the lobby and asked the receptionist to see me. Security escorted her out after she refused to leave. I watched from my office window. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 2 hours before finally driving away. This went on for 2 weeks. They tried everything. They sent me letters. They tried to get mutual acquaintances to reach out to me. Someone hacked my Facebook account and sent me messages pretending to be an old high school friend. I changed all my passwords and added 2-factor authentication to everything. Then last night happened, actually this morning, 2 a.m. 3 weeks and 2 days after I walked out of their Thanksgiving. someone started pounding on my apartment door so hard I thought they were going to break it down. Multiple people, multiple fists. I could hear shouting through the door. Dad's voice yelling, "Please, God, open up." Preston screaming that everything's gone. Mom sobbing that they're losing the house. Amelia shrieking that they're begging me. I stood in my living room listening to them destroy their hands on my door for 20 minutes. My neighbors called building security. Security called the police. I stood there in my pajamas waiting for the cops to arrive. When the police got there and cleared the hallway, I finally opened my door. A female officer asked if I wanted to press charges for harassment. I looked at my family standing there. All 4 of them. Dad's knuckles were bleeding. Mom's makeup was running down her face. Preston and Amelia looked like they hadn't slept in days. I told the officer I needed time to think about it. She gave me her card and told me to call if they came back. Then she informed my family that if they returned to my building, they'd be arrested for trespassing. They left. Dad kept trying to look back at me, but Preston was pulling him toward the stairs. Mom was crying so hard she could barely walk. I closed my door. I sat back down on my couch and I waited because here's what they don't know yet. What I haven't told them. On Monday, 1 week from now, my lawyer is filing eviction paperwork on my parents. They have 60 days to vacate my property. The house is going on the market the day after they're out. Preston's loan on that SUV. I'm calling it due. All of it. The cosigner clause means if he can't pay the full amount, I can repo the vehicle. He's got 15 days to come up with $23,000 or lose his car. Amelia's $15,000 loan. I'm taking her to small claims court. I've got the texts. I've got the bank records. I've got proof she promised repayment. None of this is revenge. This is me collecting what I'm owed and taking back what's mine. They can call it cold. They can call it cruel. They can call it whatever they want. I call it being done. They showed up at my door at 2 a.m. begging for help because apparently whatever financial situation they're in has finally collapsed. I don't know the details yet, and honestly, I don't care. What I know is that for years I propped up their lives while they mocked me behind my back. I was the safety net they didn't respect. I was the bank they never planned to repay. I was the joke they told at family dinners. Now I'm the landlord who's evicting them. I'm the cosigner who's calling the loan. I'm the creditor who's filing suit. And I'm the son and brother who's walking away forever. My lawyer warned me this is going to get ugly. He said families don't handle this kind of thing well. He asked me if I was sure I wanted to proceed. I played him the recording from that kitchen. He listened to the whole thing. When it was done, he said he'd have the papers ready by Monday. So that's where I am. It's Saturday morning. I slept maybe 2 hours. My door is still intact despite their best efforts. My phone is still off. And in 48 hours, the countdown starts on dismantling everything I've built for them while they laughed at me. People are probably going to say I should talk to them first. Give them a chance to explain. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding. But here's the thing. I heard what I heard. I recorded what I recorded. And I've spent 3 weeks watching them try to manipulate me back into position without ever once admitting what they did. I'm done being their charity case. I'm done being their punchline. I'm done being their bank. They wanted to know what I'd become. They're about to find out exactly who I am when I stop making their lives easier. They're about to learn what happens when the failure they mocked turns out to own everything they thought was theirs. And I can't wait to watch. Update 1. So, I'm back and things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. For everyone who commented on my last post telling me to stand firm, thank you. For those who said I was being too harsh and should hear them out, you're about to see why that's not happening. Monday morning, my lawyer filed the eviction notice on my parents. Standard 60-day notice, everything legal and by the book. The process server delivered it at 11 a.m. By noon, my phone was ringing again from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer, but the voicemail started piling up immediately. I need to back up and explain something I left out of my first post because honestly, I was still processing it. That 2 a.m. door pounding incident. My building has security cameras in all the hallways. The property management company sent me the footage Tuesday morning because they wanted documentation in case I decided to press charges. I watched it, all 23 minutes of it. Dad wasn't just knocking, he was slamming his entire body weight against my door. Preston was screaming about how I was killing them, how I was destroying the family. Mom kept wailing that I was her baby and how could I do this to her. Amelia was on her phone the whole time frantically texting someone, and at one point she looked directly at the camera and mouthed something. I had to replay it 4 times to figure out what she was saying. She was mouthing "help us" to the camera like she thought security was watching live and would intervene on their behalf. The building manager told me 3 separate neighbors called the police, not just one. Mrs. Chen from 4B apparently came out in her bathrobe and told them to leave me alone, that they were scaring people. Preston told her to mind her own business. Mr. Rodriguez from 4C opened his door and asked if they needed him to call someone for them, like a crisis line or something. Dad told him to shut up. I saved all of this footage, forwarded it to my lawyer. He said it strengthens our position significantly if they try to claim I'm the unreasonable one. Now, back to Monday. The eviction notice hit and within 2 hours, Preston was at my workplace again. He didn't come inside this time, probably because Mom got escorted out last time. He waited in the parking lot by my car. I spotted him from my office window around 3 p.m. He was leaning against my Camry with his arms crossed like he was prepared to wait all day. I called building security and had them walk me to my car at 5:30 when my shift ended. Preston saw us coming and immediately started talking. He said we needed to have a conversation like adults, that this had gone on long enough, that family doesn't treat each other this way. The security guard stood between us and told Preston he needed to step away from the vehicle. Preston ignored him and kept talking to me over the guard's shoulder. He wanted to know what I thought I was accomplishing with this stunt. Did I really think I could just kick Mom and Dad out of their home after everything they'd done for me? Everything they'd sacrificed. I unlocked my car and got in. Preston moved around the security guard and grabbed my car door before I could close it. He told me I had 48 hours to call off the eviction or he was going to make things very difficult for me. The security guard pulled him back and I shut the door. Preston was yelling something about consequences as I drove away. I went straight home, parked in my assigned spot in the underground garage and took the elevator up. When I got to my floor, Amelia was sitting in the hallway outside my apartment. She'd somehow gotten past building security downstairs. She stood up when she saw me and started talking immediately. She said she knew I was angry and I had every right to be upset, but this wasn't the way to handle it. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept properly in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing sweatpants and an old college sweatshirt I remembered from years ago. She told me we needed to talk about everything, really talk, because there had been a huge misunderstanding. I asked her how she got into the building. She said she waited until someone else was entering and she followed them in. I pulled out my phone and texted the building manager that we had a security breach. Then I unlocked my apartment door. Amelia asked if she could come in. I told her no. She asked if we could at least talk in the hallway. I said I had nothing to say to her. She started crying and saying that I was tearing the family apart over nothing, that we'd all said things we didn't mean at one time or another, that I was taking this way too seriously. I asked her if she had my $15,000. She stopped crying immediately and just stared at me. She said that wasn't fair, that I knew Trent's business had struggled to get off the ground, that these things take time. I told her I'd given her 18 months and I wanted my money back. She said they didn't have it right now, but they could work out a payment plan. I asked her what she thought was going to happen here. Did she think showing up at my apartment and crying would make me forget about the loan? Would it make me unhear what everyone said about me in that kitchen? She said that was taken out of context, that I didn't understand the situation. I asked her to explain the context where calling me a pathetic failure who ruins everything he touches is somehow acceptable. She couldn't answer that. She just kept saying I was being unreasonable and that family forgives each other. I told her family respects each other and nobody in our family had ever respected me. She said that wasn't true, that they loved me. I asked her when was the last time any of them had asked me how I was doing, what was going on in my life, anything about me that wasn't related to what I could do for them. She opened her mouth and closed it again. I waited. She finally said that wasn't fair, that everyone's been busy. I told her I'd been busy, too, but I still found time to wire her $15,000 when she asked for it. Building security showed up then. 2 guards. They asked Amelia to leave. She tried to argue that she was my sister and we were having a private conversation. They told her the building manager had been notified she'd entered without authorization and she needed to leave immediately or they'd call the police. She looked at me like I was supposed to intervene. I didn't say anything. She left, called me a selfish jerk on her way to the elevator. The security guards apologized for the breach and said they'd be implementing stricter entry procedures. Tuesday, I got a letter delivered to my apartment, not in the mail. Someone had slipped it under my door. It was from Mom. 3 pages handwritten on notebook paper. She wrote about how hurt she was that I'd cut them all off without explanation. How Dad was having trouble sleeping because he was so worried about me. How she didn't understand what had happened to change me so drastically. The whole letter was about how my behavior was affecting them. Not one sentence acknowledged what I'd overheard. Not one apology, just 3 pages of her being confused and hurt by my sudden coldness. At the end, she wrote that she was praying I'd come to my senses before I did something I'd regret for the rest of my life. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to my lawyer. He replied that we should document everything. Wednesday morning, Preston's wife, Jane, called me. I don't know how she got my new number because I'd changed it after blocking everyone. She must have gotten it from someone at my work. Or maybe she tried variations until one went through. She left a voicemail asking me to please talk to Preston, that he was stressed out beyond belief and it was affecting their marriage and their kids. She said the kids missed their uncle and didn't understand why I wasn't coming around anymore. That one actually got to me for about 5 minutes. I like Preston's kids. They're 8 and 6. Good kids. Not their fault. Their parents are terrible. But then I remembered that Preston had stood in my parents' kitchen and called me a living reminder of what not to become while his children were probably in the next room. He'd used me as a cautionary tale for his own kids. That thought process killed any guilt I might have felt. Thursday was when things got interesting. I got a call from my property manager, the guy who handles my 2 rental units. He said someone had contacted both of my tenants, claiming to be from the city inspector's office, telling them the building had code violations and they should document any problems with their units for an upcoming inspection. Both tenants had called him worried about what was happening. There's no inspection scheduled. Someone was trying to create problems with my rental properties. I immediately thought of Preston because this seems exactly like something he'd do. Can't prove it, but the timing is suspicious. Then Friday, yesterday, I got served with papers. Small claims court filing from Amelia. She's suing me for harassment and emotional distress, claiming I've been threatening her and her family. The filing says I've been making aggressive demands for money she doesn't owe, and that my behavior has caused her severe psychological harm, requiring therapy. I called my lawyer. He laughed. Actually laughed. He said this was the best thing she could have done for our case because now we get to present all our evidence in court, including the bank records showing I transferred her $15,000 and the text messages where she promised to pay me back. He said her filing against me basically gift-wrapped our counterclaim. But here's the thing that's really getting to me. Yesterday evening, I was at the grocery store just doing my normal shopping and I ran into my Aunt Nova in the produce section. She saw me. Her face went red and she started yelling at me in the middle of the store about what kind of person throws their own parents out on the street. She was loud enough that other shoppers stopped and stared. She said I should be ashamed of myself that my parents gave me everything and this is how I repay them. She said everyone in the family knows what kind of person I really am now and I'm going to end up alone because nobody wants to be around someone so heartless. She called me ungrateful and cruel and said I was going to regret this when my parents were gone and it was too late to make things right. I stood there holding a bag of apples and just looked at her. When she finally stopped to take a breath, I asked her if she remembered Thanksgiving, if she remembered what she'd said about me eating alone like a loser. Her expression changed. She said that was just joking around, that everyone talks like that I was being too sensitive. I told her that jokes are supposed to be funny and nobody was laughing except all of them at my expense. Then I walked away. She yelled after me that I was breaking my mother's heart. I paid for my groceries and left. Sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes just breathing. Because here's what I'm realizing. They really don't think they did anything wrong. In their minds, I'm the villain here. I'm the one tearing the family apart. I'm the one being unreasonable and cruel. The things they said about me, that was just family banter. Nothing serious. Nothing to get upset about. And maybe that's the part that's driving me crazy. If they'd apologized, if they'd admitted what they said was horrible and they regretted it, maybe things would be different. But they genuinely believe I'm overreacting. They think I'm throwing away my family over nothing. But it's not nothing. It's years of being treated as less than. Years of being the punchline. Years of being taken for granted while I paid their bills and bailed them out and showed up whenever they needed something. And I only found out how they really felt about me because I walked in at the wrong moment and heard the truth. My lawyer says the eviction will proceed as planned. My parents have 53 days left to find somewhere else to live. Preston has 12 days to pay off that vehicle loan or I'm repossessing the SUV. Amelia's court date is in 6 weeks and we're filing our counterclaim next week. People keep asking me if I feel guilty, if I'm having second thoughts, if I lie awake at night wondering if I'm doing the right thing. Honestly, no. I sleep fine. What keeps me awake is thinking about how many years I spent being their safety net while they laughed at me behind my back. How much money I gave them. How many hours I spent helping them. And the whole time they thought I was pathetic. So yeah, I'm moving forward with everything. They wanted to know what I'd become. They're finding out. Update 2. This is going to be long because everything has been happening at once and I need to get it all out. For everyone who's been following along, thank you for the support. Some of you warned me this would get worse before it got better. You were right. Preston's deadline to pay off the SUV loan passed last Wednesday. He didn't pay. He didn't even try to negotiate a payment plan. He just ignored it completely. Like if he pretended hard enough, it would go away. My lawyer sent the repossession notice Thursday morning. The vehicle was picked up from Preston's driveway Friday afternoon while he was at work. Jane called me 17 times that day. 17. I didn't answer any of them, but she left voicemails on every single call. The first few were angry, calling me vindictive and petty. The middle ones were pleading, explaining that Preston needs that car for his sales job, that this is going to cost him clients, that I'm hurting their whole family over pride. The last few were just her crying and asking how I could do this to my own nephew and niece. What Jane doesn't know, what apparently Preston never told her, is that the loan was necessary because his credit was destroyed, not from medical bills like he told me. I found out the real reason 2 weeks ago when I was reviewing documents with my lawyer. Preston had co-signed on a boat loan for a friend 4 years ago. The friend defaulted and disappeared, leaving Preston holding a $32,000 debt. Preston tried to discharge it, but couldn't, so it wrecked his credit score. He never told anyone in the family. Just let everyone think he was responsible and successful while his finances were held together with duct tape. The boat thing explains a lot, actually. It explains why he was always so eager to point out my failures. It explains why he needed me to look worse than him. If I was the family disaster, nobody would look too closely at his situation. I was his cover story. My parents' eviction date is in 31 days now. Mom has called me from different numbers 6 times in the past week. I answered once last Sunday because I wanted to hear what she had to say. She spent 40 minutes talking and in that entire conversation, she never once acknowledged what I had overheard at Thanksgiving. Instead, she focused on how unreasonable I was being, how I was punishing them for no reason, how Dad's health was deteriorating from the stress. She said, Dad has been having chest pains and she's worried he's going to have a heart attack. She said, this is all because of me, because of the pressure I'm putting on them. She asked me if I could live with myself if something happened to him. I asked her if she remembered calling me a 30-year-old who still needs his family to feed him. There was silence. Then she said that was taken out of context and I was being manipulative by bringing it up. I asked her to explain the context. She said they were all just venting because they were stressed about money and I'd been acting distant lately. I asked her how long they'd been talking about me like that. She didn't answer. I asked her if it started when I bought the house for them, or if it had been going on longer. Still nothing. Then she said I was twisting everything and making her the villain when all she'd ever done was love me. I told her that if she'd loved me, she wouldn't have spent Thanksgiving making jokes about what a loser I am. She started crying and said I was breaking her heart. I hung up. The small claims court date with Amelia was yesterday. We both showed up with lawyers, even though it's small claims and you technically don't need one. The judge seemed annoyed by that, but whatever. Amelia's lawyer argued that I was harassing his client by demanding repayment of a gift, that family members give each other money all the time without expectation of repayment, and that my aggressive collection attempts had caused her genuine psychological distress. My lawyer presented the text messages. All of them. The ones where Amelia explicitly said she'd pay me back with interest. The ones where she gave me updates on Trent's business progress and promised repayment was coming soon. The ones where she thanked me for the loan and said she didn't know what they'd do without me. The bank records showing the $15,000 transfer, screenshots of everything. Amelia's lawyer tried to argue those messages were casual conversation and didn't constitute a legal agreement. The judge asked Amelia directly if she'd promised to repay the money. She said yes, but that was before she knew I'd use it against her like this. The judge asked what that meant. She said she thought I was helping her as family, not keeping receipts like she was some kind of criminal. The judge ruled in my favor. Amelia has 90 days to repay the full $15,000 or I can pursue wage garnishment. Her lawyer looked frustrated. Amelia looked at me like I'd stabbed her. We left the courthouse separately, but I could hear her on her phone in the parking lot telling someone, probably Trent, that I'd won and they needed to figure out where to get the money. Here's the thing, though. Winning the case didn't feel satisfying. It felt necessary. There's a difference. I didn't walk out of there feeling victorious. I walked out feeling tired because this is my sister and we're in court over money because she thought she could take advantage of me and never face consequences. Yesterday evening, Dad showed up at my workplace again. Third time now. This time he waited until I was walking to my car after my shift. He didn't yell or make a scene. He just stood by my car and asked if we could talk for 5 minutes. I told him no. He said he understood I was angry, but could I please just listen? I unlocked my car. He said they'd found an apartment they could afford, but they needed first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit, $3,000 total. Could I loan it to them just this once, and they'd pay me back as soon as Dad's disability check situation got sorted out? I stared at him. This man, who'd announced at Thanksgiving that I was the family charity case, begging for scraps, was now literally standing in a parking lot asking me for $3,000. I asked him if he hurt himself. He said this was different, that they were desperate. I asked him why he thought I'd give him money after everything. He said because I'm his son and that's what family does. I got in my car. He put his hand on the door frame so I couldn't close it. He said I was being cruel and this wasn't who I was. I told him he didn't know who I was. He'd never bothered to find out. Then I told him to move his hand or I'd close the door anyway. He moved it. I drove away. I called my lawyer from the car and told him what happened. He said if Dad shows up at my workplace again, we're filing for a restraining order. He said, we have enough documented harassment to get one approved. The thing that's messing with my head is that they still think they can fix this. They think if they just explain the right way or ask the right way or apply the right pressure, I'll cave and everything will go back to normal. They don't understand that there's no going back. They showed me who they really are and I can't unsee it. Preston sent me a long text message last night from Jane's phone since I have his number blocked. He wrote that he's been doing a lot of thinking and he realizes now that the family has taken me for granted. He said they got comfortable having me as a safety net and stopped appreciating everything I did for them. He acknowledged that things were said at Thanksgiving that were hurtful and out of line. He said if I needed to hear it, he was sorry for his part in that. Then he said that he thinks I've made my point. Everyone understands now that I'm not going to be taken advantage of anymore. Message received. So maybe we can all sit down and talk about how to move forward as a family. He suggested we could do family therapy or mediation if that would help. He said his kids are asking about me constantly and it's breaking his heart to not have a good answer for why uncle isn't around anymore. I didn't respond. This morning he sent another message saying that his job has been understanding about the car situation, but he's going to lose accounts if he doesn't get reliable transportation soon. He asked if we could work out a deal where he pays me monthly for the vehicle value and I signed the title over to him. He said he could do $200 a month. $200 a month for a vehicle worth $23,000. That's over 9 years of payments. He sent this like it was a reasonable offer. Amelia has been posting on Facebook. I'm not on there anymore, but mutual acquaintances have sent me screenshots. She's been writing vague posts about family betrayal and how some people choose money over relationships. About how she's learning who really cares about her and who was just keeping score. About how God sees everything and people who hurt others will eventually face their own judgment. The comments are full of people asking if she's okay and what happened. She keeps responding that she can't get into details, but she's staying strong and focusing on the people who truly love her. Aunt Nova commented on one post, saying that some people forget where they came from and think they're better than everyone else. 17 people liked that comment. I don't care about Facebook drama, but what bothers me is the narrative they're building. In their version of events, I'm the villain who abandoned my family over nothing. I'm the cold-hearted son who's throwing his elderly parents out on the street. I'm the brother who repossessed his sibling's car out of spite. I'm the ungrateful child who forgot everything his family did for him. None of them are talking about what they said about me. None of them are acknowledging years of being treated as less than while I paid their bills. None of them are taking responsibility for anything. It's all about what I'm doing to them. My rental property manager called me Monday. Remember how I mentioned someone had contacted my tenants pretending to be a building inspector? It happened again. This time, the person claimed to be from the fire department and said there were urgent safety violations that needed to be addressed immediately. Both tenants were panicked. The fire department confirmed they'd made no such contact. I filed a police report. The officer who took my statement asked if I knew who might be doing this. I explained the situation with my family. He said, unfortunately, without proof of who's making the calls, there's not much they can do, but I should document everything and contact them if it escalates. It's Preston. I know it's Preston. This is exactly the kind of thing he'd do. He can't confront me directly anymore because of the trespassing warnings. So, he's going after my rental income. He thinks if he can create enough problems with my tenants, I'll lose rental income, and somehow that will hurt me enough to back down. What he doesn't understand is that I planned for this. I've had these rental properties for years. I know how to handle tenant issues. I know my rights as a landlord, and I have enough savings that even if both units sat empty for 6 months, I'd be fine. He's creating stress for himself more than me. 28 days until my parents have to be out of the house. My lawyer says we should prepare for them to refuse to leave. He says it happens more often than you'd think. People get eviction notices and just don't leave because they don't believe it's real until the sheriff shows up. He asked if I'm prepared for that possibility. I told him I am. He asked if I'm sure because it's one thing to file papers and another thing to watch your parents' belongings get put on the curb. I said I've been sure since the moment I heard them laughing about me in that kitchen. He said, okay, then we proceed as planned. I'm not backing down. People keep waiting for me to crack, to feel guilty, to realize I've taken things too far, but I haven't taken anything too far. I'm just matching the energy they gave me for years. They thought I was pathetic. They're finding out exactly how capable I actually am. They thought I needed them. They're learning who actually needed whom. Preston still doesn't have a car. Amelia still owes me $15,000. My parents still need to find somewhere to live. And I'm still sleeping fine at night because I know I didn't create this situation. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. For weeks until this part of it is over. Then we'll see where things stand. Final update. It's been 6 weeks since my last update and this is probably going to be my final post about this situation. Everything came to a head last week and I need to process it somewhere because I can't talk about it with anyone who knows the full story. The eviction date was last Tuesday. My parents had 60 days to find a new place and move out. They used 59 of those days pretending it wasn't going to happen. My lawyer warned me this might occur. He said some people genuinely believe if they ignore legal documents long enough, they'll disappear. My parents were those people. Monday night, the day before the sheriff was scheduled to oversee the eviction, Dad called me from Mom's phone. I'd blocked both their numbers weeks ago, but somehow I'd missed blocking hers after she got a new phone. I answered without thinking. Dad started talking immediately. No greeting, just launched into this speech about how they'd hired a moving truck for Tuesday morning and they'd be out by noon. But they needed to talk to me about the house. He said they'd been thinking and they had a proposal. If I agreed to let them stay for 6 more months, they'd pay me rent. $400 a month. They'd get it together. I'd see. They just needed time to figure things out. Dad's disability claim was still pending, and once that came through, they'd be stable. 6 months was all they needed. I asked him if he understood what an eviction was. He said he knew I was angry, but this was still their home. They'd lived there for 30 years. Didn't that count for something? I told him it counted for exactly nothing because it was my house and they were out of time. He said I was being inflexible and refusing to even consider compromise. I asked him what he was compromising. He said they were offering to pay rent. I said $400 a month wouldn't even cover the property taxes I've been paying for 6 years. He went quiet. Then he said that maybe if I'd communicated better about my expectations, things wouldn't have gotten to this point. Maybe if I'd told them I was keeping track of every dollar and every favor, they would have acted differently. I asked him if he was seriously blaming me for not warning him that I'd eventually get tired of being disrespected. He said that wasn't what he meant. I asked what he did mean. He couldn't explain. I told him the eviction was happening Tuesday whether they were packed or not. He said I was making a huge mistake and I'd regret this for the rest of my life. Then he hung up. Mom called back 30 seconds later crying so hard I could barely understand her. She kept saying, "Please," over and over. "Just please." I told her I had nothing more to say and hung up. Tuesday morning, I met my lawyer at the house at 9 a.m. The sheriff was already there with 2 deputies. There was a moving truck in the driveway, a small one, nowhere near big enough for a house full of furniture. Preston's borrowed car was parked on the street. Amelia's SUV was behind it. The whole family had shown up. When I walked up the driveway, Preston came out the front door. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. He'd lost weight and he wasn't shaving regularly. He asked if we could talk before this went any further. I said no. He said he had something I needed to hear. I kept walking toward where the sheriff was standing. Preston followed me, saying he'd figured out why I was really doing this, why I was so angry, and it wasn't actually about Thanksgiving at all. I stopped and looked at him. He said I'd been planning this for years. I'd bought the house 3 years ago, knowing eventually I'd use it as leverage. I'd kept receipts of every loan and favor, knowing I'd cash them in someday. This wasn't about being hurt. This was about control. I'd been waiting for an excuse to blow up the family so I could prove I was better than all of them. I asked him if that made him feel better, believing that. He said it was the only thing that made sense. I told him he was wrong. He said, "Then why else would I be doing this? Why else would I destroy my own family over words said in private that I was never supposed to hear?" I said, maybe that was exactly why. Maybe the fact that they only said those things when they thought I couldn't hear was worse than if they'd said it to my face. Amelia came out then. She walked right up to me and said she'd made the first payment on the court judgment. $2,000. She had the receipt to prove it. She wanted to know if that changed anything. I said it didn't. She said she was trying. Didn't that matter? I said it mattered in court, but it didn't change what was happening today. She said I was being deliberately cruel and she didn't understand how I'd turned into this person. Mom came out on the porch. She was holding a photo album, one of those old fabric-covered ones from the 90s. She called my name and held it up, saying she'd been looking through old pictures. And did I remember this trip we took to the beach when I was 7? Did I remember how Dad taught me to swim? Did I remember how happy we all were? She was trying to make me remember when we were a real family before everything went wrong. I told the sheriff I was ready to proceed. He nodded and explained to my parents that they needed to finish loading the truck with whatever items they wanted to keep and vacate the property within 2 hours. Anything left would be removed and placed at the curb. Mom dropped the photo album. It landed in the grass and pages scattered. Nobody picked them up. The next 2 hours were brutal. My parents loaded what they could, but they hadn't packed properly. They were just grabbing things randomly and carrying them to the truck. Preston and Amelia were helping, but they were arguing with Mom and Dad about what should go and what should stay. At one point, Dad tried to take a riding mower from the shed, and I had to tell him no. That stayed with the house. He said he'd bought that mower 15 years ago. I said he'd bought it for a house he didn't own anymore. Jane showed up around 10:30 with Preston's kids. They stayed in the car, but I could see them watching everything. Preston went over and talked to them through the window. When he came back, his face was red and he wouldn't look at anyone. By 11 o'clock, the truck was full, but the house was still mostly furnished. Mom kept going back inside trying to figure out what else they could fit. The sheriff finally told her time was up. She said she just needed 15 more minutes. He said she'd had 60 days. She started crying again and said they had nowhere to put everything. The apartment they'd rented was tiny, just a 1-bedroom. She said all their memories were in this house. Dad put his arm around her and walked her to their car. He said something to Preston and Amelia. They nodded. Then Dad looked at me for a long moment. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like he was trying to figure out who I was. Then they got in their car and drove away. The moving truck followed them. Preston and Amelia stayed. They stood in the driveway while the sheriff and deputies did a walkthrough to confirm the property was vacated. Preston asked if I was happy now. I said no. He seemed surprised by that. He asked what the point was then if it didn't even make me happy. I said the point was that it was done. Amelia said they were all going to move forward without me. They were going to be a family and I wouldn't be part of it anymore. She said years from now when I was alone, I'd realize what I'd thrown away. Preston added that his kids would grow up barely remembering me. That would be my legacy, being the uncle who disappeared. I didn't respond to any of that. The sheriff came out and confirmed the property was clear. He handed me the documentation. My lawyer shook my hand and said he'd follow up with final paperwork within a week. Then everyone left and I was standing alone in the driveway of the house I'd bought 3 years ago. I went inside. It was strange seeing it empty. Not completely empty because they'd left furniture, but empty of them. I walked through each room. The kitchen where I'd heard them laughing. The living room where we'd had 100 family dinners, the bedrooms, the bathroom where Dad kept his medication. Everything was there, but nobody was living in it anymore. I found the photo album in the front yard on my way out. The pages that had blown away were scattered across the grass. I picked them up. Pictures of me as a kid, me on Dad's shoulders, me and Preston building a snowman, me and Amelia at her high school graduation, me and Mom baking cookies. All these moments of when we were actually a family before everything got complicated. I put the photos back in the album and I left it on the porch. If they came back for anything, they'd find it. If they didn't, eventually I'd throw it away. The house went on the market yesterday. My realtor says we should have offers within 2 weeks. The market is strong and it's a good property. I'll make a profit. Not a huge one after what I put into it, but enough. Preston's borrowed car situation resolved itself last week when the friend who loaned it to him needed it back. Preston's been taking the bus to sales calls. His performance numbers are apparently way down. Jane's working extra shifts to make up the income difference. I know this because Aunt Nova posted about it on Facebook, talking about how some people cause suffering and other people bear it with grace. Amelia made another payment on the court judgment, $1,000 this time. At this rate, she'll have it paid off in about a year. Trent's business apparently got a small client that's keeping them afloat, but barely. Mom and Dad are in a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Dad's disability claim was denied. He's appealing, but it could take months. Mom got a part-time job at a grocery store. She's 62 years old, scanning groceries because they need the money. Do I feel good about any of this? No. Do I regret it? Also, no. That's the weird space I'm living in right now. I don't feel victorious. I don't feel satisfied. I just feel like something that needed to end has ended. People ask me if I'll ever reconcile with them. The honest answer is, I don't know. Right now, I can't imagine a scenario where we come back from this. They'd have to actually acknowledge what they did, not what I did in response to it. They'd have to take responsibility for years of disrespect. They'd have to understand that you can't treat someone as disposable and then be surprised when they dispose of you. I don't think they're capable of that level of self-reflection. I think they genuinely believe they're the victims here and I'm the villain. Maybe that's easier for them. Maybe they need to believe that to live with themselves. What I know is that I'm not going back to being their safety net. I'm not going back to being the family punchline. I'm not going back to paying for their lives while they mock mine. Whatever relationship we have moving forward, if we have one at all, will be completely different from what we had. And honestly, I think what we had wasn't worth saving. So, that's where things are. The house is sold. The debts are being repaid. The legal matters are settling. My family hates me. And I'm sitting in my apartment on a Friday night typing this out because I don't have anywhere else to process it. Someone in my first post said that sometimes the trash takes itself out. I get what they meant now. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally matching my actions to my worth. They showed me what they thought I was worth. I showed them what I'm actually worth. The difference was too big to bridge. That's really all there is to say. I heard them laughing at me through a kitchen door and everything changed. They're outside my door now, but not literally anymore. They're just gone and I'm here and that's how it ends.